In London's fog-choked streets of Victorian times, a phantom prowled, a being shrouded in darkness who would haunt the annals of history. Jack the Ripper's name became synonymous with terror after ripping through the heart of Whitechapel in 1888. But just as suddenly as he emerged, he disappeared, leaving unanswered questions and a sinister void that continues to plague historians, investigators, and crime analysts over a century later. What compelled this infamous figure to vanish without a trace? As we retrace the unsettling timeline of Jack the Ripper's short-lived but devastating terror, we invite you to explore the theories, evidence, and shadows he left behind. But beware, every answer seems to lead to yet another question. In 1888, London was the pinnacle of industrialization, dazzling with economic growth and empire. Yet tucked away in the city's underbelly was an entirely different world. Whitechapel in the East End represented this harsh contrast, crowded, filthy, and rife with crime. For many who lived here, survival was brutal. Women were especially vulnerable, driven to prostitution amidst poverty and desperation. It was against this grim backdrop that Jack the Ripper found his hunting ground. The narrow alleys and dimly lit streets offered the perfect cover for his horrific crimes. To understand the fear that gripped London, imagine hearing of a murderer who struck without warning, mutilated his victims with surgical precision, and then dissolved like smoke into the night. Jack became a symbol of Whitechapel's darkest fears, a nightmare given form. Jack the Ripper's infamy was born from a spree of slayings that started in late August 1888. His first known victim, Mary Ann Nichols, was discovered on August 31st, her throat slashed with grotesque precision. Soon, more bodies followed. Annie Chapman in early September, Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes, both on the same night, September 30th. But it was Mary Jane Kelly, his final victim, who met the most gruesome fate. On November 9th, 1888, her body was found disfigured beyond recognition in her tiny room, a murder so horrific it sent shockwaves through London. Each of these killings had a signature, precision cuts hinting at anatomical knowledge, leading some to theorize that Jack could have been a doctor or butcher. At the height of the panic, newspapers fueled public hysteria. Police combed through the streets, and famously, Jack himself seemed to taunt investigators with letters like the infamous "Dear Boss" note, deepening the macabre fascination surrounding his identity. But then, after Mary Jane Kelly, silence. The murders stopped abruptly, and a dense fog of confusion replaced the Ripper's reign of terror. Why would such a calculated killer, seemingly in the prime of his spree, simply disappear? As quickly as Jack the Ripper had erupted into London's consciousness, he seemed to melt into obscurity. No more bodies were found with his grisly signature mutilations. Was his disappearance the result of death, capture, or something more sinister? One of the most straightforward theories is that Jack's reign ended because he was stopped, either through death or capture. Were the police more successful than publicly credited? There have long been whispers that the authorities might have arrested him, but kept his identity hidden to prevent public unrest. Alternatively, could he have met his end in another way? London's streets were a dangerous place, even for someone like Jack. Was he stabbed in a fight, taken by his own recklessness, or did he succumb to illness? Some speculate he may have even succumbed to suicide after Mary Jane Kelly's violent murder, a final act that forced him to confront the monstrosity of his actions. While plausible, these theories remain largely speculative as no records explicitly confirm his capture or demise. Another chilling possibility is that Jack the Ripper wasn't silenced at all. He simply moved. Did he flee Whitechapel to elude capture and continue his spree elsewhere? There have been intriguing cases of similar patterns of murders emerging abroad, including in America and Eastern Europe. Could Jack's meticulous approach have evolved under a new identity? If so, how many more could have been victims of his sadistic craft? The idea that the Ripper escaped only reinforces the haunting question: how many ripples did his actions cause away from London's shores? Perhaps one of the most controversial theories is that Jack the Ripper was no ordinary citizen, but someone with influence and connections. Some contend that his high social standing afforded him the ability to evade punishment altogether. One notable suggestion involves members of the British aristocracy, even tying the Ripper to the royal family. According to this theory, the government might have orchestrated a cover-up to shield an influential figure from disgrace. Such allegations lack definitive proof but perfectly align with the sinister aura that shrouds the case. The concept of Jack being a powerful or respected figure strikes a chilling chord. Was he shielded by his social stature, hiding in plain sight beneath polished appearances? For crime analysts, this possibility, with its implications of collusion or moral decay, remains an intriguing area of exploration. What if the Ripper didn't flee or die? What if instead he simply couldn't continue? Many have speculated that the killer may have been plagued by mental illness. Other analysts suggest that Jack could have been stricken by physical illness, rendering him unable to carry out his heinous acts. Could he have been hospitalized, imprisoned for an unrelated offense, or institutionalized without anyone linking him to the crimes? This theory, though less dramatic than others, offers a rational explanation for the abrupt silence that followed his spree. It also raises fascinating questions about our understanding of criminal psychology and whether the Ripper's identity secretly died with him. For over a century, one question has lingered in the minds of investigators. Could Jack the Ripper have been more than one person? Could we have been misled by the media, the police, or even history itself? Some historians argue that the Ripper murders may not all have been committed by the same individual. The unique details of the killings, while eerily similar, did exhibit small variations. Could another killer have been mimicking Jack's methods, or could the entire legend be a patchwork of unrelated crimes stitched together? This theory opens a realm of competing questions. Was Jack a singular entity, or is his myth a haunting reminder of society's inability to trust its own narrative? While Jack the Ripper disappeared into obscurity, his lasting legacy remains immense. The case left a profound impact on crime analysis and investigation techniques. It marked the beginning of what modern criminology refers to as profiling, an attempt to understand the mind behind the madness. Jack inspired countless stories, becoming a macabre muse for films, books, and studies. But beyond the lore lies an undeniable truth. His crimes highlighted the societal neglect endemic to places like Whitechapel. The terror he sowed illuminated the vulnerabilities of the poor, the plight of women in desperate circumstances, and the inability of law enforcement to protect those most in need. The greatest agony surrounding Jack the Ripper's case is its lack of closure. Over 130 years later, the mystery remains unsolved. Why did such a dangerous figure stop so suddenly, leaving no explanation? Were key pieces of evidence lost, buried, or actively suppressed to protect certain individuals? Modern investigators continue to sift through old police records, DNA testing, and even digital reconstructions. Yet the answers stubbornly elude us, as though Jack himself still guards his secrets from beyond the grave. Ultimately, Jack the Ripper's story is one of fear, fascination, and frustration. He walked the blood-soaked streets of Whitechapel and then, like a spectre, he disappeared. Over the years, his shadow has grown, even as the man behind the name remains intangible. Perhaps that is the greatest mystery of all, not who Jack the Ripper was, but how his story has endured. His crimes were grisly, his motives unfathomable, and his disappearance maddening. But somehow the Ripper continues to whisper from history's darkest corners, daring us to unravel his secrets. The answer to Jack's vanishing act may never come, but perhaps the enduring enigma is his final triumph, an eternal reminder of the mysteries that lie just beneath the surface of human understanding. Will we ever truly answer the question of why he disappeared? Or is Jack destined to be a haunting figure, forever lost in the foggy streets of Victorian London?